evening. Welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Information on how to watch, attend, and participate, as well as agendas, minutes, and recordings can be found on Broomfield's website at broomfield.org/council meetings. The public may also participate in public comment, either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, neighborhood, and the agenda, the item the caller would like to comment on. If you'd like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you'll need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 have 2 minutes. And if time remains, the next 26 plus participants have 1 minute to speak. For those who wish to make public comment on the 2025 operating and capital budgets, including the water and wastewater enterprise ordinances items this evening, there is a sign-up sheet located in the lobby. That list, along with those calling in, will be used to determine the order of the speakers. We'll hear from 6 in-person individuals, then 1 phone caller until we hit these limits. Priority will be given to those who indicated their Broomfield residents on the sign-up sheet. Non-residents will have a chance to speak if time remains after Broomfield residents have made their comments. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available in the back of the council chambers. We'll now proceed with tonight's meeting. The special meeting of the City Council is called to order. No council members are absent. Councilmember Wim is attending remotely. A quorum of the council is present. So will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. We'll plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We'll begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of the council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. There are no agenda items under petitions and communications this evening. Does any member of the council have any reports or updates? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just have one update. The Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority meeting on October 17th has been canceled. The next meeting will most likely be on December 19th. Just wanted to update council.
Thank you. Any other council member updates, reports? Well, I have one. I had the opportunity to attend the Denver Metro Chamber Leadership Foundation trip to Charlotte. It's their annual LEX trip. They've been doing it for 30 years, and it connects community stewards with pioneering leaders across the country, offering direct experience with cutting edge and fostering collective determination to drive progress. This year's themes were economic mobility, manufacturing, investment and innovation and incubation, partnerships with corporate, education and health, placemaking, and smart growth. It is impressive to know that what we learned with Charlotte is they have a very well-funded equity plan set by the mayor's office that includes many business partnerships and mobility priorities with focused efforts and initiatives. The delegates, including myself, learned a lot about the work being done, and our Denver Metro leaders look forward to future collaborations to deepen equity efforts in Colorado. We'll now proceed with public comment. If anyone would like to be heard on items that are not on our agenda, please make your way to the podium. Go ahead and state your name and neighborhood for the record. And try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. Namaste.
Namaste.
My name is Parsa. I'm a faculty at the University of Denver. We are here representing Indian American community. Please stand. And we are celebrating Universal Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. What that means is this week, we take the time to thank our government, mayors and councilmen, our teacher, our firemen and police. They make us lives better, and they are the one reason what Broomfield is. We, Indian American community, very, very proud of our Broomfield. This is the most dynamic, diverse, and progressive community. Still feels like a small town. Feels like a small town where I can go DMV, come out in 2 minutes. Where else is it possible? Amazing. Where I can walk in, talk to congressman. This is the beauty of Broomfield, where government close to people. And for that, we really, truly appreciate what you're doing and doing for us. Everything you're doing progressively. Of course, there are issues. We understand that. But you are giving us chance to voice our expression. That's most important in democratic society. With that, we have something for you. And celebrating Universal Brotherhood Sisterhood Day, we all here tie a small ribbon on your hands. Our mayor has one. It is pure, simple cotton. You take it out if you want. But here we are, kids from the schools here. They're all Broomfield residents, by the way. They are here to express their gratitude, appreciation. Come on in, please. Yeah.
You can just put your hand out if you want. You guys can come around and do it. Mhm. Yes.
What we have, appreciation for mayor has done for our community. Comes to us every April of New Year's Day. That's what it's all about. Thank you very much. Come on. Don't go yet. Don't go yet. All of oh, yeah, right. For council, a small flag appreciating not just the mayor, all the council members.
Aw.
And representing, thanking all of council members here. Yes, Mo. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a great way to start the meeting. All right, well, thank you. We will now continue with public comments. If anyone would like to be heard, please make your way to the podium. This is for items that are not on the agenda. So if you have any general comments, thank you, council member. Now's the time. I don't see anyone. Do we have anybody online? I don't see anyone either. Okay, then moving on. We'll now continue with the report section of the agenda. Manager Hoffman, do you have a report?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rogers, do you have a report?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Wonderful. Council's consideration of the consent agenda is next. The clerk will read all of the consent items by title, and there'll be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 6A through 6D by title?
6A, Resolution 2024-122, approving a construction agreement with Goodland Construction, Inc. for Commerce Street, Nickel Street, and Industrial Lane intersection improvements. Resolution 2024-123, approving a consulting agreement with Roxall Consulting Group, Inc. for construction management service for the Commerce Street, Nickel Street, and Industrial Lane intersection improvements project. Resolution 2024-127, approving the third amendment to the consulting agreement with Felsberg Holt Ulevig, Inc. for the Commerce Street, Nickel Street, and Industrial Lane intersection improvements project. 6B, Resolution 2024-137, approving a construction agreement with AD Miller Services, Inc. for the Norm Smith Service Center remodel. 6C, Resolution 2024-139, approving a construction agreement with Rock and Company for the 595 Flatiron Boulevard DSW retaining wall repair. 6D, Resolution number 2024-135, approving a master license agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Vero Broadband LLC.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on these items, please make your way to the podium. Not seeing any, and no online. Then does any member of council have any comments or questions on these agenda items? Councilmember Lim.
I had a question on 6A. The memo recounts what I recall from being on council for a while, that we've been talking about this project and approving different steps for a while. My question is, it goes back to 2019. So my question is, was it planned that the construction would not be going forward until 2020, end of 2024 into 25? Were there extenuating circumstances that caused the delay? And did the delay cause an increase in costs that we didn't anticipate?
We appreciate that question, Councilmember Lim. Mr. Graham is already down at the podium.
Good evening, councilors, city manager. My name is Brian Graham. I'm the capital improvement program manager in our community development department. The project at Commerce, Nickel, and Industrial has taken quite a while to get to this point. As you note, there were a number of grant funding issues and coordination issues with BNSF as well as CDOT that have taken a long time. Would I say in 2019 or 2020 that this was anticipated to take this long? Perhaps not, but this was a very complex project with stakeholders that take time to work with and work through details and reviews. So the design is complicated, and we're, I think, not very far off target in terms of the anticipated schedule. But we're finally to the point where this evening before you is the construction agreement that would start soon.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to having it completed finally, but okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, is there a motion by council that consent items 6A through 6D be approved? Councilmember Ward.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Leslie.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Then council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Wim, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously 10-0. Our first item under action items this evening is the public hearing on the proposed operating and capital budgets for 2025 and first reading on 2 ordinances concerning water and sewer charges and the creation of a stormwater enterprise and related charges. These items all relate to the budget and therefore we'll review them concurrently, which means we'll have one staff presentation followed by an opportunity for public comment and an opportunity for council comment. The public hearing on the proposed budgets includes the budgets for the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority and the Arista Local Improvement District. Therefore, before we proceed, we will convene meetings of the Borough and ALID. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is called to order. I'll note that all members of the authority are present. Authority member Nguyen is attending remotely. I'll now call to order the meeting of the Arista Local Improvement District. I'll note that all members are present and Councilmember Nguyen is attending remotely. And I'll declare the public hearing open. Council, Borough, and ALID have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And as they move down to the podium, Director of Finance, Graham Clark, David Giacovetto Etz. That's such a mouthful. I apologize. Deputy Director of Finance will walk us through this item. It's not unlike the presentation that council has seen before. We did recently receive Moody upgrades for our bond ratings that will be added to the end. And both Director and Deputy Director will walk us through those items as well. And with that, Deputy Director, kick us off if you would, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. I'm David Acevedo Yates, Deputy Director of Finance. I'd like to begin by thanking the budget team who's present here, but really the entire finance team and all department staff across the organization. The budget process is truly a team effort. And we've all, they've all worked together to make today possible. This is my first time going through the budget process here with Broomfield. And a couple of things I heard while going through this process are that the level of collaboration that people experienced this year is the highest that they've ever realized, and that this year has been the smoothest budget process they've gone through. This is a testament to the dedication to our community and the passion for service that exists in our staff. All of this, of course, begins with vision from our community and from our city council, and flows through the leadership of our city manager's office. I'm both proud and humbled to present the results of all of those pieces coming together tonight. Next slide, please. A quick overview of tonight and what's to come. Tonight, we're having the public hearing of the budget and the first reading of the enterprise ordinances. On October 22nd, we will be presenting the budget resolution and asking for a council vote on that resolution. We will also be completing the second reading and vote on the enterprise rate ordinances. Next slide, please. So how did we get to this point? We began the process in early February with council priorities and strategic vision. We took those pieces and aligned them with Broomfield's community goals, while at the same time collecting and analyzing supporting data to inform the strategic decisions we had to make. Throughout the subsequent months, we took in community input, and we held multiple meetings with departments to formulate the recommendations that we ultimately presented to the city manager's office. In early September, we presented the budget to council. Now we'll be providing the final presentations, and upon council direction, we'll be preparing the final budget documents for publication. Next slide, please. Listed here are the 4 buckets that are the foundation upon which we align the budget process with Broomfield's community goals, namely financial sustainability and resilience. The other bucket has been a topic of discussion lately, and so we've provided a bit more context and some examples of projects that fall into the other bucket. These requests are still needs of the community, and departments across the organization require these to meet the needs of residents or the community and are related to quality of life. Some of the items in the other bucket are from their own dedicated revenue stream. For example, replacement of ash trees around the city. While items in the other bucket don't quite rise to the level of critical, they are still essential services to the community. For example, the iWorks AI road rating software upgrade in Public Works, which is set to improve road rating efficiency. Also, the Enterprise Resource Planning or ERP software upgrade falls in with the other bucket. And while we have been and can continue to operate without the ERP software upgrade, modernizing our system is vital to our continued success and growth. And so that's why we're pursuing it. Next slide, please. Here we can see areas of focus and key highlights. To point out specifically a couple of items, grant funding opportunities. We have, over the course of this year, undergone a big shift, moving towards a more centralized process, which has already provided more insight on the current levels of grant activity across the organization than ever before. And that process also has included a formal internal operational policy and standardized procedures to aid in driving efficiency in the overall grant process. Also, the goal of 20% operational reserves. We have presented in the 2025 budget that we are on pace to meet that goal by the end of 2025. Next slide, please. This is a broad look at the sources of funds and expenditures in the total 2025 budget. Of the approximately $577 million for 2025, 80.1 million are new CIP expenditures, not counting the enterprise operating CIP. Just to note that the decrease from 2024 original budget to the 2025 proposed budget, that is mainly in decreases in unrelated operational expenditures, so in the fiduciary fund, which is simply a pass-through. I'll go over, dig a little deeper into the revenues and expenses in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So first, we'll focus on the revenues. We are expecting an overall decrease of 2% across all revenue streams in 2025. While we are expecting property tax and sales tax to increase 3% collectively, we are expecting to see decreases in revenues in other streams. The biggest factor in the decrease is ARPA, as we will not be receiving any new ARPA funds for 2025, and also decreases in building permits and use taxes. We'll have a slide showing the ARPA expenses coming up. Next slide, please. So on the personnel side, this is the outcome of the repeatable process of prioritization to align with our community goals. So if we focus on public safety, here you can see the additions to police and public works. These positions will be vital to furthering our commitment to prioritizing public safety. And so we really took a hard look and worked with police and public works to identify their needs. Also, as you heard during the departmental presentations, the library positions are tied directly to their dedicated revenue stream, utilizing their fund balance to further their ability to provide quality programming and customer service to Broomfield residents. Next slide, please. Moving over to the non-personnel operating expenses, here we see the highlights for the changes in 2025. While these are just the highlights, overall, there were not a lot of additional non-personnel operating expenses added to the budget. This is due to the philosophy of reallocation that we've been implementing over the last few years. The budget team has worked very hard and diligently with each department to look within their current budgets to find funding for any changes that they need. So in the process, we work with the departments to find that, to see if that funding exists within their current budget and really only bring forth new additions if we're unable to find it within their current funding. Next slide, please. So shifting into the capital improvement plan, here we highlight again the results of the repeatable prioritization of focusing on public safety. We can see the wastewater CIP is the largest share, and that's mainly due to phase 1 and phase 2 of the wastewater treatment expansion. That will be starting in Q4, so late 2025. We've programmed in expenses related to phase 1 and the design phase for phase 2 of that entire expansion. I also want to highlight the street sealing and management program, which falls under transportation, and that is a big contributor to the CIP plan for 2025. Next slide, please. So this chart here focuses on the spending by priority level. So we've talked about these 4 buckets. And so again, the other bucket doesn't fit into critical mandate or obligation by definition, but you can see some examples of what falls under the other category. So the annual pavement management program is $8.2 million, and that falls into the other bucket. So does that ERP financial software replacement. And so in total, in the other bucket, what we see is the annual preventative maintenance or replacement activities of current assets equals about $14 million. And that, again, falls into that other bucket. So it makes up the majority of that 22.6 million that we see in there. Next slide, please. So this model here shows the share of new capital projects versus projects that are replacement and rehabilitation of current assets. We use models like this as strategic decision guiding tools. Here in particular, we use this model to make intentional, balanced, methodical decisions between new and current asset management. As we move forward in the future as a maturing community, replacement and rehabilitation becomes a priority. We have to be able to balance the new assets and the current assets, and that balance could look different from year to year. And so models like these are important for us to make those decisions of how we move forward. Next slide, please. And so here's the ARPA update. So this is the expense side of ARPA. So as I mentioned, we won't be receiving any new funds for ARPA in 2025. However, we still do have expenses for the funds that we have received. Here are the projects that are receiving ARPA funds. And the key to this table here is that all funds have to be encumbered by the end of 2024. And we have to expend those ARPA funds by the end of 2026. And to provide an update, we are on track to meet both of those goals. And so we should be able to expend all ARPA funds by the end of the process. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, we do, as part of the budget process, prepare the budgets for each borough area. Here we've presented a summarized view of the revenues and expenditures by each authority and a summary of the types of revenue and expense activities within. Next slide, please. And also, we prepared the Arista Local Improvement District budget. And so we've provided here the summary, just showing that the revenue and the expenses balance out. Next, I'll be passing the remainder of the presentation to Director Clark to cover the enterprise funds. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. A major part of the overall budget is the enterprise funds. This is a culmination of 3 years that we will be discussing tonight. Next slide. So this is the same proposal that was introduced in June. If you remember, billed revenue increases are evaluated annually as part of the budget development process to ensure that projected revenues match proposed expenditures. We have a repeatable process which will be reviewed and recommendations will be brought forward each year in June. It cannot be stressed enough that this rate increase is necessary for anticipated bond issuances for the upcoming water tanks and wastewater expansion project. A side note, Councilmember Lim mentioned the cost of stormwater costs for the apartment and townhouses. And I just wanted to clarify that apartments would be $6.60 and townhouses would be $8.80 for stormwater. Those are the same single-family equivalents we use for license fees. Next slide. This slide you've seen before, but it's important because even after the implementation of new rates, we are still below average of the surrounding communities' utility bills. Next slide. You can see in this table, this is the water fund projection, that we still have some work to do as we approach 2029. This is our estimation, of course. There are many variables that go into this plan, and these numbers could change. But the different variables that go into this include precipitation, inflation of CIP projects, and annual operational programs, developmental revenue, intergovernmental revenue, such as grants, customer growth, and much more. The water system and the sewer system have specific costs of operating for providing good quality drinking water and safe sewer systems. The amount of revenue necessary to offset these expenditures are what we are requesting in the form of rate increases tonight. Next slide. Similarly, for sewer, we have a projected revenue and expenses out through 2029. We have been very intentional in this year's budget development in coordinating the timing of the upcoming bond issuances with the necessary rate increases. Next slide. This next slide is the initiative of a new program called the Utility Rate Assistance Fund. As part of the 2025 approval and setting of the utility rates, an assistance fund program will be established to assist those with financial hardship. The funding for this program would be from the appropriate enterprise funds. This program, of course, is dependent on the utility fee recommendation being approved by council tonight and the council direction on the URAF program will be requested after council direction on the utility fee recommendation is received. Next slide. As we go into some detail here, the specific amount for a household will be based on the change in their annual utility bill. As an example, some households may receive the maximum of $250, while others, the utility charge may be less for a calendar year. Staff does recommend keeping the eligibility to apply for those making up to 60% AMI. If we move into a more complicated method for determining eligibility, we'll have to reevaluate staffing. Next slide. Another new item will be quarterly updates to council beginning in April on enterprise funds. Finance will provide the number of people who've applied for the URAF program, the number of people who have been assisted so far, how much we've provided in the form of credits, along with quarterly updates for revenue, expenditures, precipitation, usage, along with bond issuances updates. Public Works and Community Development will also be part of the quarterly updates. Again, this is anticipated to start in April. The next 3 slides are from an additional slide deck that we've added due to the recent Moody's upgrade. So late last week, we got news from Moody's, and we received this new information from the rating agency that they have upgraded CCOB's general obligation bond and sewer bonds, with the consideration of the water bond as well. In conversations with Moody's over the last couple of weeks, they understood the reasoning of the rate increases. They mentioned that we need more stable revenue to properly bond and be appropriately leveraged as we head into the 2026 bond issuances. Their upgrade of sewer and potentially water was all predicated on the rate increases being approved. Not doing so would likely lead to a downgrade of the bonds and the bond rating. They were also glad to hear of the new stormwater fund, as they mentioned that that's a best practice in enterprise management. Next slide. Broomfield also received a high score in governance. This is the financial management of the enterprise funds. There's also environmental and social scores as well. They call them the ESG factors. Next slide. So what does this upgrade mean for Broomfield? The Moody's rating agency is an unbiased third party who views Broomfield as having prudent financial management with a forward-looking view. This upgrade will help us pay less in interest over the life of the 2026 bonds. And the bond stabilization and upgrade is again based on the recommended rate increases being improved. Next slide. So the proposed 2025 budgets for all entities will be presented to City Council on October 22nd for consideration and final adoption. For the enterprise, if City Council adopts ordinances 2253 and 2255 on first reading, then a public hearing and second reading of the ordinances will be scheduled for October 22nd, to be held concurrently with consideration of the overall 2025 proposed budget. This concludes tonight's presentation. Thank you. We're open for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. We'll start with public comments, and we have a limit of 90 minutes for this item, which shouldn't be a problem. We had a sign-up sheet in the lobby. That list, along with a list of those calling in, which there are none, will be used to determine the order of the speakers. We'll hear from 6 in-person individuals, then one caller until we hit the limits. When I call your name, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Our first 3 speakers are Brian Garaki, John Santoro, and Ed Travis.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Brian Garaki. I live at Trails North off of 136th and Lowell, actually right next to Todd. When it comes to the increase in taxes this last year, like really hurt a lot of the veterans, myself included. I'm a 100% disabled veteran and a single father of 2 children. My mortgage increased by over $400 a month on a fixed income. It's really hard to get by every single month with almost 2 teenagers. They eat me literally out of house and home. So that being said, when you're spending $600 a week on groceries, gas, cost of living, everything, you can't afford to go out to eat. You can't afford to have the nice luxuries in life. And then you understand that, yes, the city needs to increase taxes. They need to increase water rates. They need to increase things to keep infrastructure running. But my point of standing up here tonight is just this last Sunday. My oldest son, who's 14, got mad at me because he was being really suspicious on his phone and wouldn't let it go. I took his phone away, as any good parent who has a 14-year-old boy who's talking with girls and everything else. I took his phone away so I could check his phone. He refused. And he got so mad at me that he ran away from the house. I had no idea where my 14-year-old was. I'm on the phone with City and County of Broomfield PD, non-emergency line, trying to find out where my son went. In the meantime, I have a 9-year-old inside the house who is got stomach flu. So if anybody can imagine, stomach flu, 9-year-old, you're lucky if they hit the bathroom. So I'm on the phone trying to get in touch with City and County PD, trying to figure out where my son is, cleaning up vomit off a bathroom floor, running around back and forth, still trying to find out where my son is. 2 hours and 30 minutes later, I finally got a phone call from Broomfield PD and spoke to an officer. 2 hours and 30 minutes later, my child was gone. When I spoke to 2 officers, they said, we're understaffed. We have more important calls other than a missing 14-year-old. We have more important calls that we have to get to before a missing 14-year-old than you at this point. Raising water, raising sewer, raising the taxes as a 100% disabled, honorably discharged, and decorated veteran on somebody who's on a fixed income, raising 2 kids by themselves, raising taxes on water, raising taxes on property, that all has an effect. Our neighborhood is great. I love it. My boys play street hockey all the time right in front of the house. Like, we absolutely love it. It's quiet. But recently in our neighborhood, what I have seen is people are moving out. They don't want to be here anymore, mainly because it is too expensive for people to live. Our community is dedicated to a lot of retired people who live on a fixed income, whether it be Social Security or disability or anything else. They're on a fixed income. And when my mortgage goes up by $400 a month due to assessments that shouldn't have happened in the first place because I'm a 100% disabled veteran, that takes a hit on families. People can't afford to live here. So if we keep increasing taxes, not only does it affect the mom and pop, but it affects the businesses that are down the road because people can't afford to go out to eat. It affects gas prices. People don't want to go to the gas station. They'll drive 30 minutes up the road to save 5-10 cents.
Yes, and I appreciate everything you're saying, but your time has expired. We
Yes,
have a-
ma'am.
So thank you so much, and I appreciate you coming in to tell us your story.
Thank you.
Next is John Santoro and Ed Travis.
Madam Mayor, council, staff, I rise tonight to speak to management and fiscal responsibility of you sitting in front of us. We've heard from you repeatedly, you want to make Broomfield more affordable. The gentleman, a veteran just before me, claims, and I believe him, that we're seeing that we really can't trust you and your decisions over time. We have about $500 million in debt in this county, city and county. It does not seem to me that you really care. I've watched you take $2 million recently away from a senior fund to help families and seniors who are having difficulty paying bills and give it to a startup project. It doesn't make sense to me to trust what I hear from the council. And I think a lot of my friends are feeling the very same way. I've lived here 47 years. I'm not going to move away. But I'm not sure this council shouldn't move away. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ed Travis, Michael Smith, and Susie Gallant.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm going to approach this thing in a slightly different way, but I guess maybe the same. I'm going to approach it from a standpoint of someone who's just newly moved here. We moved here 2 years ago, and we live in Spruce Meadows. We're blessed. It's a wonderful place to live. And this city is a wonderful place. We moved from where I grew up. I grew up in California. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I grew up in Cupertino, very close to Apple. 10 years ago, I would have thought we would have never moved. We have kids, and I looked around one day and I said, this is not where I want to raise my kids. And why is that? There's political, social issues, that kind of thing. But the main thing is that I didn't feel like a customer anymore. I felt like I lived there. They assumed I would stay there. The leaders of the city, the county, the state, they didn't care. They just thought I was a food source, that we would pay whatever came on down the road. Because California was this wonderful place to live with great atmosphere, the ocean, stuff along that line. Well, it got to a point where the cost, not just in dollars and cents, but in everything, outweighed what I was getting. We moved. It was a big deal. We lived in our house for 30 years before we moved. I love Broomfield. It's the best decision we ever made. We are so happy here. But I look around, and having grown up there, I'm a businessman. And having grown up there, I see much of the same path, I guess I would say, that I saw in California. A little chip here, a little chip there. Now, I don't know enough about the water situation to pass judgment. That's why you're all here to manage this. But I can tell you, in California, they forgot that the money coming from the taxpayers is from their customers that choose to live there. And they did not manage the process. They looked upon just passing the buck down the line until it wasn't a good place to live. So I just really want to pass along. We want you to manage this process, not just pass it on. I don't know the answers, but that's my thought.
Thank you very much.
Thought there was someone else, but
I think, were you Mr. Travis or Mr. Smith? Yeah, Mr. Travis wasn't around. So go ahead, Ms.
I'm good. Okay.
Gallant.
I'm Susie Gallant, and I live here in Broomfield on Highland Park Drive. And now I'm becoming a familiar face with you. I've never done so much of this, but I wear this friendly shirt of kisses and hugs because I'm going to also give you the other side. All right. Before I say that, I want to address the gentleman who had a 14-year-old son in the texting. I just went through that last night with my grandson at my daughter's house, and he wouldn't get on the phone. He gave her a lot of lip. He won't do his homework, and she said to him, if this was your grandma, she would take the phone and take a hammer to it. I said, absolutely. So, I started to walk out the door. He says, well, here, take it. I said, okay. And I took it. Yeah, I didn't take a hammer to it because the parents have to pay for it later. They're not going to do that. But anyhow, you're not the only one with the texting and they're so glued, they're addicted. It is an addiction. But now I'm going to move on. And I come here with friendliness, sort of. I think you're making some big mistakes. I think you can redeem yourselves by taking a pause and not doing. You have to look around at all these people. You got a pretty full crowd here tonight. They're all feeling the pinch, not just from you, but from their cars, their mortgage, from all of those. They're taking it a hit after hit. And what this does, I don't know if you ever drive around your community or drive Broomfield and go through and look at the houses, but they're changing. People that can afford it are going to Xeriscape. Those who can't afford it, the grass is burning up and dying and they're just becoming a fire hazard and then they'll just die. So the appreciation that you think these houses are going to continue to have, which is another subject, are going to start depreciating. You're going to have a lot of resentment. People don't want to give up their homes. They should be able to live in their homes, work and have a few bucks at the end of the month to take a dinner, to take whatever, but you're squeezing them. 50% increase in the water rate. Dubai, who lives in the desert, went out and created, don't ask me how, water. They put storms in the air, had a big rain, it actually flooded Dubai. So there's answers and solutions to some of this, but I don't think a 50% raise on the back of your constituents is going to work. You do have elections next year. I would love to see all of you stay here and work with this rather than sitting here massaging these numbers that come up on the screen from your employees. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. That building, what is it, the First Capitol building or whatever the building is sitting in, that could be a moneymaker right now. There's so much need on so many levels. So that's one. I feel terrible on the trash. The trash is another one of your mistakes. My neighbor came to me, day 3, said, I can't afford the trash anymore. Do you want to share trash? Yeah, sure. So we're sharing trash. Well, what do you think he's going to do? He can't afford it. It's one of his things. And yet you're putting on the back of everyone, taking our right away to select who we want. And it's baloney that you're saving $600 or some odd dollars in saving the streets. It's the same number of trucks, no matter what you do. So the trucks are trucks. The weight is weight. We have concrete trucks now driving down our street. When I brought that up, what's it going to do to the street? There was crickets from you. But now you're using it as an argument to support it won't cost you $600,000 to do your streets. I encourage you, I have a lot more, but I'm not going to be able to get to it. I encourage you to take a stand back and say, we want to stay here. We want to make this city and community a good place. We want to be able to help our constituents. You work for us. We don't work for you, but that's not the way it feels. So I encourage you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Our next 3 speakers are Rick Fernandez, Gary Claffey, and Robin Cunningham.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, staff, and City Council. Thank you for the time this evening. Was listening to the presentation by staff as the numbers and the rate increase proposal was being provided here. Wrote down a few things. I heard financial stability, sustainability. I heard resiliency. I heard quality of life. I heard what does this rate improvement in terms of bond rating mean to Broomfield? Great perspective from the seats that you're sitting in or the seats that staff is sitting in. I would ask you to consider those same questions for the people in the room that have dealt with increases in property taxes. 29% increase in terms of property tax coming into the city. We are looking at our 3rd rate increase on water rates, and a 50% increase is significant. $39 per month for each person in this room that owns a home or is going to pay those water rates. That's significant. That's not something, that is significant. And I look at this and ask the question, and I asked it before, what options were looked at? And I think there was an option, it was a glimmer of hope option that was in front of you in the study session a couple weeks ago. Half of you decided to reject that option. I think it was a step in the right direction, but it was still rejected. I heard from Councilmember Marshallshin that all options were on the table. And when push came to shove, he leaned back, said, nope. The folks in this room are listening. They're watching what's happening, and they expect you to lead. And I know we're in a spot where, of course, the infrastructure needs to be taken care of. We understand what that's about. But to act as if a significant increase to our cost of living, which I'm glad a few of the other speakers brought that up, this is real. This is a decision that folks are going to have to make in some cases, whether or not they stay in Broomfield or not. I've lived in Broomfield my entire life. And it's a crossroads that many of us may be feeling to say, is the cost of living and the quality of life, to use that term, is that going to be sustainable, to use another term, for the citizens in Broomfield? So I would ask you, I would echo the notion of take a step back, really look at the options, and consider what this is going to do to the families of Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and City Council. My name is Gary Klopaki. Live at 15690 Columbus Mountain Drive in Anthem. Was a city manager for 45 years and sent you some emails. And I was just disappointed that just not trying to get these costs down. I mentioned to the mayor, if you saw this coming, if you went to the voters and asked the voters to do this, which we did in Lafayette. And by the way, one of the reasons that Lafayette has this higher rates is because we started a long time ago to firm all that water for the Conservancy District and buying Baseline Reservoir. It wasn't just standing and sitting on our hands. And by the way, that bond issue, after we enhanced it with the voters, got a AAA bond rating. Okay, that's maybe has passed because you didn't go to the voters. You could have enhanced those bonds by general obligation backing, no more cost. The water fund would have paid everything. You got this huge reserve now stuck in front of you that you have to raise rates just to pay for that reserve. Sad. Then I told you by email, well, you surely can afford in your general fund not to lower the rates by what was proposed, but taking that and add it to the reserve. Everybody will benefit. It doesn't cost you any money. You move it from the general fund to the water fund. You know, most cities in the conservation district that are now trying to firm all this water from Wyoming border down to here, and you're kind of the tail end of the Conservancy District, they all have huge problems with trying to finance that. They either go to their voters, which we did in Lafayette, or they help other funds to make those reserves. But nobody's thinking out of the box. Nobody's trying to make it better. You can do it. You have the funds. You don't have to take it and give it away. You can put a new schedule in place. And by the way, with the 50% increase, the lady's right. You're going to burn up yards. You're going to harden the demand on water. And you're going to have quite a mess because at the end of that curve, people will stop consuming water. And now you have another death spiral on rate increases. I just don't get it. This is poor.
Thank you very much. Robin Cunningham.
I'm Robin Cunningham. I live in Aspen Creek. And the other day I was training for the Mayor's Cup. And as I was training, that's a little run we do in Broomfield, a 5K. As I was training, I fell skinned myself up, got up, continued on, and I come to these meetings as well. I speak to you because I want my voice heard. I often fall, but I love Broomfield, and I think it's very important that I let my voice be heard. So I was going to talk about the city center lake, but I'll do that a different time. And I was going to talk about that because you're going to put in a pond, and that you're going to raise our rates. You've put into focus the drought provisions. Now you're going to put in a pond that will take 26 acre feet. And then you also will have to fill up that pond. And it doesn't make sense to me. That additional fill up is 13 acres. And for those that you don't know what an acre foot is, that's 325,851 gallons is an acre foot. But I'll move on. So I've been selling real estate long enough to remember when North Glen raised their rates. I can't remember if it was due to a sewer system that they had to build or a water system. But I can tell you, many people did not water their yards. Many people did add rocks to their yards. It looked like hell, and it did affect the values of homes. And that was probably 30 years ago. So you all should keep in mind how that can impact our community, because some people are going to have to look at whether they're going to put food on the table, whether they're going to pay the higher taxes so their home isn't foreclosed on. Many impacts to people here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, that is all the people that signed up, but if anyone would like to be heard on this item, the budget in general, water sewer enterprises, please come up to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Janet Sunt. I live in Ward 5. Good evening, Mayor and City Council member. I want to piggyback on all these people about the impact that it has to our families, to our households, to our budgets. I myself, as you know, am disabled. I live on, they talk about 60% AMI. I'm at 20% AMI. I cannot make my bills every month. I hoard my food. I haven't been watering or mowing my lawn. You guys have no idea what you're doing. The extra $300 that it added to my affordable $1,000 house payment. I've been in my house since 1998. I have a very low house payment, and that is kicking my butt for the taxes that you have imposed. The additional water rates, you think another $30, $40 a month is bad. Well, you know what? I can't pay my water bill. I can't pay my public service bill. My kids, fortunately, are in college and they have jobs while they're going to school. They pay for their own college. One just was awarded 6 full ride scholarships for law school. You know, it's not like where I've had a good career all my life, but I can't work because of my accident. And what you are doing to people like me and my neighbors across the street that are elderly, my mother that's 92, my sister that was in a horrific accident when she was 17. You have no idea what you're doing to people in this community. And I am sick and tired of you guys not listening to anybody. Like they said, you're not qualified to be making these decisions. You need some help. You put the money in the wrong pockets. You spend our money as if it's your own. And it is not your own, it is ours. that you're spending. And we are sick and tired of it. And I do not want to come to another one of these damn city council meetings and listen to you guys totally disregard what the people are saying. The last time when we talked about the trash, I was here for both of those meetings. I spoke at them. The last one lasted until 11 o'clock. It went afterwards. And yet, after all the people that got up and spoke against it, you, Mr. Marsh, you got up and said, oh, we're going to accept it. We're going to approve it regardless of what you guys say. You are not representing the city. You are not representing the people of this community. You are ruining the community. Like they said, people are putting in rocks. They're putting in those stupid gardens in the front to grow vegetables. And you're going to tell me to be quiet.
Now,
And
Ms. Sund, finish your point.
you've got to start listening to the people. You've got to start making better decisions for this community. And you are going to be fired come the election.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. John Ewalt, Pinnacle North. I could say probably way too much or just a little, so I'll just say a little. Looking through the slides, there was one titled CCOB Total Budget. And just looking at the graph there, something jumps out. And I know it's small, you can't see it, but if you look at the expenditures, they keep going up. If you look at the revenues, they're relatively flat. At some point, those lines are going to cross. And if you look at the proposed, if you say you look at the proposed budget for 2025, it's below that sloping line, but it's really only 1% different from the original 2024 budget. So budgets always go up over the year, and I don't expect it's going to be any different in 2025, but at some point, the budgets need to start flattening out or falling down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please come on up and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, Mayor, Pro Tem, council members, city staff. I'm going to be a little exception here. All due respect to my fellow citizens who are having struggles. I do understand struggles. I want to thank the city council for making very difficult decisions about a very important issue, and that is water. A surprise to no one. Everybody in the country knows that water is a scarce resource now. It's going to become more and more of an issue. So dealing with these problems is extremely difficult, but extremely important. I paid my water bill today to the city, and I have a regular sized little house in Anthem. I'm in Ward 4, and my water bill was up just shy of $200. I like to keep my grass green, and I'm in a position where I can do that. I may not always be in that position, but at this point, I understand what deferred maintenance is. We had a homeowners association at a condominium that we own in Silverthorne. For years, the HOA board had one priority, and that was keeping our dues low. And because of that, the properties deteriorated year after year after year. And rather than dealing with that, they just kept putting off, kicking down the can. Now, I don't see how anybody can blame the current city council for water issues that have been going on for years and that we're now faced with the music. We have to deal with it. Again, I just want to say thank you to the city council for doing that. When we did get a good board on our condo HOA up there, we got hit immediately with assessments. We got increases in our dues that were in the neighborhood of 75%, and nobody liked that. But you know what? They're fixing up the properties. They're dealing with 23 years of deferred maintenance. And you can't put that stuff off forever. Again, all due respect for everybody that's struggling here, but we need to look at this in a bigger picture, I think, and understand that these are not easy decisions. None of the people on this council are there to try and punish anybody. They're doing the best they can. They're working with the city staff who are doing the best they can to come up with the answers to these issues and problems. So instead of criticizing, we should try to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard? All right, moving on then. Next is questions from the city council, the borough, and the ALID. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against the item is later. Are there any questions from our council, urban renewal, or Arista local improvement district directors, which are all the same people because we wear a million hats? Who would like to go first? Oh, okay, Councilmember Marshall Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I often push my button first, so I was holding up to see if anybody else wanted to. So, actually, I wanted to speak about the assistance program because that's a topic that I think is important to residents. So, just from staff, it's a $250. That's annually, correct?
Correct.
And is that going to be credited to the residents' bills each month, like a $20 a month type of thing?
I'm going to have Director Clark come up. It depends on if you are single family home or if there's a master reader. Councilmember Marsh Holshan, if we are able to, Graham, can you talk just a little bit more in depth on that, if you would, please?
Yes, thank you. The idea is that it would be $250 annually. The idea is to cover over half of the increase that we're talking about here tonight. Again, the 60% AMI will get a targeted approach to help as many people under that 60% as possible, and several of the ones that you've heard here tonight.
What's the income level for 60% AMI?
That I do not know. Not sure if Jeff knows that, but
Mr. Romine is making his way down.
I guess my question is, what's the income level for 60% versus 100%?
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Councilmember Marsh Holsham. In Broomfield, the 60% AMI income level for a two-person household is $62,640 a year. For a four-person, it's $78,000.
And for 100%?
100% would be, for a four-person, that would be $130,400. So as you probably know, our median household income here in Broomfield is about 117,000. So the AMI levels are just slightly higher because it includes the entire metro area.
Okay, thank you. And to go back to the question on how is it going to be doled out? I know with our property tax refund that we offer for up to 100%, 80%. I know that was a refund that you pay your taxes, you get a rebate on your taxes. Is this going to be similar where they're going to get a rebate at the end of the year, or is it going to be credited monthly to their bill? Like a standard single family household type of situation?
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, we're still designing, but our intent is that we would do a credit every quarter for those that are getting direct billed. So they would get it probably in the first month, therefore covering, so it'd apply for all 3 quarters. We want to make sure we're getting ahead of it, if you will. And we can do that calculation based on last year's bills and what it would be projected to be. For those who are on what's called a master meter, which is oftentimes your mobile homes and your apartment complexes, there we're going to be providing checks on a regular basis. We do that directly because that way we're paying the resident household as opposed to the landlord and hoping they pass on that benefit.
Okay, thank you. On other discussions, I mean, obviously the public is not always privy to the individual conversations that we have about other issues. I had floated an idea of easing out the stormwater, waiving the stormwater fund this year, which would save the residents $11 a month. Mentor Hoffman, can you talk about why that isn't feasible?
As has been the past practice, it's bottom line balancing. And so if you have anything that is in the enterprise, whether it's stormwater or water or sewer, we've been taking from the sewer bottom line in order to pay for stormwater. So part of the sustainability piece is, it was mentioned that we've increased water rates for the last 2 years, which is absolutely the case. And ironically, when you're looking at having a sustainable revenue stream, it has to be on the base and not have a volatile stream, which is either borrowing from another account, which continues to deplete that account. So there's only a period of time that you can take from one account and put it into another account and not have a deterioration of the needs in the original account. So the stormwater is continuing to be coming out of sewer, which then depletes the sewer fund, which means we can't bond, which means we don't have the revenue stream in order to do the CIP projects. So having a standalone, it's not a standalone where we can say, let's just don't do any stormwater until until we're able to have a dedicated revenue stream for that specific item. They're intertwined. And that's what creates the volatility for those accounts. Just like when we pulled the lever so that we wouldn't be impacting the residents 2 years ago when we said, let's increase tap fees. And that didn't work. And then the subsequent year was all about consumption. Again, you're relying on outside sources, whether that is development for the tap fees and or consumption, what someone spends. Part of shoring up each one of those 3 accounts is to have a sustainable revenue stream so that we're able to bond, that we're able to have the reserves that need to be in place, short-term and long-term.
So instead of having an across the board cut on any one of these funds, this proposal would do a targeted approach at those that are going to be impacted the hardest. Is that my understanding?
Regarding the assistance fund, yes, sir, that's right.
That's all I have at the moment, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to try to step back and take a little bit longer perspective on this. I know all of us feel the impact of the increase in our property taxes over the assessed valuation, which we have no control over. That's a state matter. But the state legislature has had a number of meetings over the summer to deal with that. What is going to be the impact, say next year, of the state legislators' actions on our property taxes?
In anticipation from the last legislative session, staff did not budget into the 2024 budget nor the 2025 budget. When the discussions began with the ratcheting down effect that we've seen, and now the new compromise, if you all want to refer to it as that, the press certainly does. We're anticipating that that's going to be about a $2.5 million difference for us, which we've built into the 2025 budget and moving forward. The calculations, we anticipate those calculations not to stabilize, but to have a ratcheting down effect. And that the same goes, Councilmember Leslie, for the commercial. We were talking just earlier tonight before the meeting began. There are a lot, the assessors and the Assessors Association, along with the state, along with the locals, continue to try to design what the future is going to look like with a multitude of different assessment rates. We do anticipate, particularly because Broomfield has such a high level of commercial, and particularly office, that anticipating what that decrease will be, particularly as we come into 26, 27, 28, and building these budgets, anticipating that decrease will, it will hit all municipalities, but those that have those direct impact property taxes, office in particular, will be hardest hit with regards to the commercial. The reason the commercial is important is because the rooftops, the residents, at their assessment rates, the gap between the services, and once we get through with the pass-through, so CCOB keeps about 25%, although the check says City and County of Broomfield. The rest goes primarily to the school districts and to the fire districts. That overall percentage, the gap is made up for by the commercial, which is why it's so important to manage the commercial development along with the residential development. So when that commercial assessment rate decreases significantly, which we're anticipating from the office primarily, future forecasting is going to be exceptionally expensive. One of our residents had indicated that flat line, there will be that nexus where that axis begins to cross over. And we anticipate that occurring certainly by 2026, 2027.
Okay, so we anticipate a decline in revenue based on the taxes that we collect because of these changes. And concurrently, the taxpayer will have some relief because they'll be paying less taxes that we won't be able to collect, right? So what will be the impact on the individual taxpayers in terms of a decrease in their taxes?
That I don't know. It's, again, what we can determine is the assessment rates. It depends on the overall valuation. It depends on, even with the same zip code, 820, there was a multitude of variances on the percentage increases. Do we anticipate there's going to be a drop to where our residents feel relief from that spike? Probably not. I think the average increase was 27% throughout Broomfield. Some significantly higher, some a little bit lower. But no, we don't anticipate property taxes dropping enough to have it be a wash.
Okay. Secondarily, what happens if we take the advice we're hearing, which is to continue to kick the can down the road, and we don't take these actions?
Similar to the answer for Councilmember Marsh Holshan, it's a domino effect. And so when you have it's compounding. Over a decade of little to no increases. And then you hit COVID. Along with growth, supply chain issues, inflation unlike any of us have ever seen before. And part of the deferred maintenance when we're looking at the new and not having that deferred maintenance piece. So it really is, it's complex in that if you pull one thread, you're going to have a multitude of that domino effect. We did send council an email regarding what those immediate impacts would be. And primarily, simply put, particularly with the Moody's bond ratings, they're predicated, as Director Clark had indicated, on those increases. And that's short-term and long-term. So the immediate would be the inability to bond for the wastewater treatment facility as well as for the water tanks. And then the dollars that need to be targeted for the deferred maintenance. We have a $23 million backlog that continues to grow, not exponentially, but it depends upon those other variables as we go out, particularly for these 5 years. It's just, it's compounding.
So I would assume, therefore, there would be an immediate effect on us who live here. We wouldn't have the same access to water. We might not be able to continue to expand and add additional water. We will continue to have problems with wastewater. There are new regulations affiliated with wastewater, et cetera, that we wouldn't be able to meet. And our sewage systems could break down on an ongoing basis. I know that was explained to us that there are leaks and breaks constantly, and those increase. So one could predict potentially that if we do nothing, it's not just about we can't bond, it's we may not be able to deliver water to our residents. We may not be able to flush like we are used to doing. I'm assuming that's correct.
I don't want to, I don't want to raise the flag to say if this isn't done this year, a catastrophe will hit. Eventually, it will be catastrophic. Until that time comes, unlike most things, when you're talking about water and sewer, particularly with the sewer and the wastewater, there is a gradual decline until it hits that nexus. And then that decline is not a gradual decline anymore. It is, it's no longer a stair stepping. So again, it's difficult to quantify when that would occur, Councilmember Leslie, but the inevitability is certain.
Yeah, and the cost increase is certain as well.
Without a doubt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Lim.
If we could go back to the URAF slide that has the difference in the percentage AMIs, just for reference.
Sure.
That would be helpful. My question is, if council were to give direction that we would prefer that the URAF program be targeted at 100% AMI, what would be any barriers that staff would have to implementing that?
I don't think I would necessarily say it would be a barrier, Councilmember Lim. Like most things, the funding would increase, and then staff would have to ascertain what that additional, so the process itself won't change, the application wouldn't change, the information we collect and verify wouldn't change, just the number of folks that would be eligible would increase, meaning that staffing in order to accommodate that program would also increase. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a barrier. It's just something that we'd have to add.
Okay. And what is envisioned as far as what staff thought in reviewing this program? With the partial property tax refund program, I think we have an annual review scheduled where we examine if the AMI is set properly in relation to what it's costing. And so what would be the comparable process for this URAF?
Mayor Pro Tem, council members. So we're obviously figuring things out as we go. You are correct with the partial property tax program. We plan for an annual review of it. That'll be presented to council for consideration of renewal of that program. This program would likely go through similar types of things. We would do an analysis. This is our estimations in the number of households. We'd find out what the real productivity or the real outcome is. And then we'd be reporting that back to council roughly 6 months to 9 months after the kickoff of this. So roughly now next year, because it would all be starting in February effectively. It starts January 1st, but the first bills go out in February. So we would report back, and then it'd be council's decision whether they want to adjust certain things like the AMI level or continue the program or not. That's an annual decision.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could just stay on this chart for a second. I'm just curious in terms of the spread of whether going up to 100% AMI and or concentrating more toward people who are at the 10, 20, 30, where these increases are a much higher proportion of their monthly income. Was there any, is that one possible? Do we think, for people at that level, just the increase as a whole is going to be very difficult. So in other words, is it possible for folks who are at 20%, 30% to shield them from this increase, at least for the first year, versus going all the way up to 100%? People might be more able, it's a lower percentage of their annual income.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Councilmember Cohen, I think what you're asking is if we went up to 100% of the refund
No,
of
if we
the increase or
concentrated
100%
more-
of the AMI?
If we concentrated more of the rebate, for lack of a better term, at the lower levels.
Right now, we're proposing the 60% as a whole, because that's similar to what we've been doing in the other program, as you know. It's also tends to be what's considered that place where affordability starts becoming different, for lack of better. The impacts will vary, and also what we recognize is when you look at the distribution of households across property type, if you will, tenure type, obviously there's a higher concentration of renters in all three of these categories, but the highest concentration of renters would be in the 60% AMI. So it becomes a little bit difficult just because we're trying to figure out the master meter section and trying to be equitable across all types of utilities. So I think that answers your
Okay.
question.
And in year two, I assume as these increases continue to come, we'll just be asked each year to renew this
It would be
formula?
Yes, council member, it'd be a budget allocation. It'd be something that we'd bring forward as a part of our normal budget work as well as for renewal of the program.
Okay, thank you. And could we look at the chart where it compared to the other cities in the area? And I just wanted to point to this because while it does show us in the middle, last year when we approved rates, just last year, we were at the far left, at the bottom. So it's not so much that we're in the middle, but as you heard tonight from the folks speaking, it's the rate of increase. We're a very sudden acceleration of rates, whereas these other communities have been at these rates for some time and they make more marginal incremental increases. Was that something that was taken into account when you were making this proposal, whether this increase could be at a slower rate? Take into account the impact on homeowners of such a sudden high increase to get us from the bottom to the middle in 1 or 2 years?
Councilmember Cohen, it's a good question. We certainly looked at it. Frankly, it's been about 10 years where we should have been doing CPI increases. If we would have been doing that since 2014, we'd have another $39 million in our water fund. If we would have just kept up with our CPI or your regular inflation. So those years where you do nothing, you're losing 3% of purchasing power just overnight by not doing anything, right? So the idea is that, and what these communities have done is done regular increases every year, right? So 2 years, yeah, we've done it the last 2 years. We should have been doing it the last, 50 years, right? Because we didn't do that, we're in the situation. So that we need to be very clear about that. We've looked to see if we could do this over time. That is not able to be done anymore. We've got these large projects that we cannot be overly leveraged in debt. We just wouldn't be able to bond. And so because of what we have coming up in the future, we need to do this now. And I feel 100% that that's exactly the truth. We've looked at these numbers so many times over the last, 8 months, trying to figure out a different way. I think, the best way is the targeted approach for the residents that really are feeling the pinch.
Along those same lines, this proposal also includes a new enterprise fund for stormwater. And I guess the question is, considering how much we're increasing water rates to get up to where you say we should have been several years ago, is it necessary to have that new utility fund, enterprise fund this year of all years since we've gone 25 years without it? Is it something, or is it just the projects just don't give us any wiggle room that are down the road?
We're trying to look towards the future. So we're really looking at these future projects, and that 5-year CIP is really what we're focused on. basically what would happen if we didn't do the stormwater is that the water and the sewer would be increased by that much more, right? So whatever we're trying to achieve in the stormwater, those expenses would essentially just be brought back over to water and sewer, how they have been. And those water and sewer rates would have to go up exponentially even higher because we didn't do the stormwater.
Okay, thank you. And I think I have time. One last question. We have the catch-22 of you can't win. I think Manager Hoffman mentioned at another meeting that because we had a wet year, we lost revenues. And when we have a dry year, we have higher revenues, so you can't win. But I was curious what the calculation is, the impact will be when you increase water rates, people, as I think the gentleman from Anthem spoke, you're gonna water less, or you may put xeriscaping in. I will mention that I know xeriscaping has had a bad rap for a long time, but it actually has become more popular and doesn't necessarily hurt your property values. It might increase them. But I'm just curious, what was your calculation of what revenues we might lose from people sticker shock? Suddenly say, well, I'm not going to water the backyard, or I'm not watering the trees now, or whatever reaction would be.
Councilmember Cohen, we don't have a reduction within the model at this point, mainly because I wanted to clarify something. These are base rate increases, right? So no matter how much we're not trying to increase the tiers. So the amount of usage you use is not going to be affected by your bill. What this is because we need this rate stability, again, those fluctuations from people using less and using more really make it hard to budget, really make it hard to know what we can afford going forward when we've got these large variations. And so the idea behind this, and you'll see this certainly as we move forward, I think a lot of communities will continue to raise the base fee because that's where the stability comes in, and it helps us to understand that we know what is going to be coming in terms of budgeted revenue because it's rate stability. And so we're not adjusting any tiers in this recommendation. It's just base rate.
Well, we did introduce tiers last year. Do we have any knowledge gain from the first year with tier charges?
It was a tough year because that was the year that was so wet. So it's kind of an anomaly. It was not a year where we could kind of produce any type of trends or anything like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other council member questions? Any other first round questions before I go to second round? No? All right, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple follow-up questions. Can we talk about just a question on the assistance fund? This what we're seeing tonight is much different than what we originally talked about back in July, correct?
Regarding the assistance fund?
Yeah.
It has more specificity, Councilmember Marsh-Holshen, talking and specifically bringing it to the AMI levels.
Because I thought I remember that we discussed it being only a small handful of people that would be benefit from. I guess my question is what we're seeing tonight a result of the community's feedback and concerns? Along
with council's, yes.
Right, thank you. And then one follow-up for staff on the general budget and probably for Mr. Romine. It was mentioned by someone regarding the increase in spending each year. Can you talk about, I mean, everybody knows that our inflation has been a lot the last few years. Can you talk about the difference in inflation for our budget versus the general consumer price index inflation? And why it's so much more, I guess?
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you for that question, actually, because that's CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, which is a market basket of goods, is measured at the national level, and then also for this area, it's the Denver Aurora. So it's a common basket measure. That is what the household would necessarily buy. It was set up in the 60s and then renewed or refined a little bit later, but it includes cereal, healthcare, things like that. The city budget, when we built it over the last at least 5 years, I've been here working with the finance director previously and with Mr. Clark and the budget team this year, we focused on the types of things we spend money on. The city and county of Broomfield, the primary asset or the primary expense is labor. It is a people business government. And so we spend a significant amount on salaries. Those are the people that drive the trucks. Those are the people that cut the grass, et cetera. The other part is the equipment, machines, as well as materials, and then energy. And then there's obviously healthcare costs and others related to those employees. So we look at it from the component portions of the actual budget as opposed to using the CPI, which is really focused on households.
And I get, my question is our inflation that we have seen as a government higher than what the average person sees?
It can be, it depends on the time. We've seen the experience on both directions in recent times. Generally speaking, though, because labor tends, at least in Colorado and the metropolitan area, labor has risen faster historically than CPI. Therefore, we have seen that municipal budgets and state budgets and others have risen faster because of the increase in costs. However, we've also seen periods where there's rapid inflation on food as an example, in supermarkets and other things. And so what the consumer may have felt last year or 2 years ago, because of the big change in grocery pricing and rent, specifically, the city growth was a little bit different. Our revenue or our expenses didn't rise quite at the same rate that consumers did.
Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
If I might add on to that.
Sure, Mr. Black.
We also use a metrics called the Colorado Construction Index. And we look at that quite a bit with our enterprise folks, and we have seen a significant amount of increases in enterprise. I think Ken mentioned a few months back on the chemical increases that we've seen over 100%. So different kind of segments of the city are affected more at different times, and the enterprise fund has seen a significant amount, not only in kind of chemicals and operating costs, but especially in construction costs, like different projects that we're doing for the enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from council or Arista directors? All right, there being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. Councils, boroughs, and the Arista Board's consideration and vote on the proposed 2025 budgets will be at the October 22nd, 2024 council meeting. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2253. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2253, amending Title 13 of the Broomfield Municipal Code to change water, wastewater, and reclaimed wastewater fees and service charges.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading and ordered published in full? Councilmember Ward.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Second.
My screen just went blank. Okay, there it is. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Lim.
I understand that there's a multitude of factors that have led Broomfield to this crossroads with our water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure needs. I also understand that there was a lack of adequate asset management information and other factors that led to previous rate recommendations from staff to council that in hindsight should have been higher. I do not think that we can expect all of Broomfield to absorb a 50% increase in their utility bill as a result of all these factors. I understand that we need to move forward with these rate increases, but I will have some further comments on the level of the URAF funding, which I understand we're supposed to talk about after this vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Marsh-Holshan.
Thank you, Mayor. Ditto what Councilmember Lim just said. I do think this is a struggle for a lot of people. I understand that. This affects all of us up here. We are residents in Broomfield. We pay the increase. I'm in a place in my life where $40 a month isn't going to hurt me. There was a period of time not that long ago where $40 a month would have hurt me a lot and would have taken food out of my kid's mouth. So I understand the need and the difficulty for a lot of people. this has been a difficult discussion. We've had this conversation for a few months now. We've had multiple meetings, multiple group presentations with the residents. You know, when this first came to light and what we need to do this, I was hesitant. I probably would have, if that had come to a vote at that point, I probably would have voted against it. And we've had a lot of conversations and a lot of discussions. One resident said that, I mentioned on social media that all options are on the table, and I meant that all options are on the table. What it comes down to it is the options that we have are what the options that we have. We don't have many options to not raise the rates. We have to do something. You can't kick the can down the road any farther. Broomfield, we have a lot of examples of that right now that this council is fixing. The First Bank Center is a great example of that. We're fixing it, and it will be generating revenue in the near future. We did talk about maybe easing the stormwater and doing that, but it ultimately came down to it that the best course of action is to help those that need it the very most. And as with Councilmember Lim, I will be just have my thoughts on the level of that assistance program, but I do think that is the best way to move forward is charge the rates that we need to charge, stop kicking the can down the road, and help those that really need the help. So I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Cohen.
At the risk of being redundant, basically I agree with Councilmember Lim and Councilmember Marshall. I've been spending the last 2 months trying to figure out how to vote against this over primarily the concern of just the rate of increase so quickly, so fast. And I really wish that the original staff presentation had, and I mean this respectfully, had a little more humility and acknowledgement of the pain this would cause staff or residents. And as my neighbor mentioned, it's a hardship for a fair number of people. And not just maybe the annual amount, but just the fact that I think in the last 2 years combined, we probably raised annual water rates by $700. And that's a chunk for a lot of people on top of property taxes and other rates that have increased because of the costs have increased. So it's, and obviously all of us, none of us really want to do this, but we're up against the prospect of repeating the same errors that the councils of 10 years ago did by not going on an incremental basis to avoid this issue and not wanting to hurt too many people with these rates so fast. Taking into account, we are still at the middle of the pack, and most of our neighbors and neighboring communities already pay far more for water. I know when I came to Broomfield 11 years ago now, I first lived in Westminster and then the yard was rock. And I found out why, because the water rates in Westminster were so high and everybody told me, move to Broomfield, they've got lower rates, they're smarter, they have a better deal. No one, everybody, I think we all accepted we must be geniuses, we have lower water rates. And it wasn't necessarily the case, and now we're learning that. So I will vote for this on first reading. I'm really interested in the debate, in the discussion on the second mention as Councilmember Lim referenced, and hopefully we can find a way to alleviate the pain as much as we can.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yeah, so I moved here 11 years ago as well, and it was more affordable in a lot of ways. I know you guys don't think we're immune from paying taxes and fees because we live here too. We're your neighbors, and none of us wants to do this. But when you're faced with these really difficult decisions as to the future of our water supply and whether we're going to be able to supply all of the people who've lived here, you really don't have much of an option. This is so hard, and it's heartbreaking when we get blamed, when we're just here volunteering, trying to help. We're not benefiting in any way. So it hurts because we are your neighbors. We're not politicians. We are here for love of community, just like you are. So try to, de-escalate this rhetoric and this hatefulness. There's enough of that. We don't need that in Broomfield. And be kind, because we are all doing the best we can. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2253. Council members, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Nguyen, please state your vote verbally. You there, Councilmember Nguyen?
Councilmember Nguyen is no longer on.
All right, so all council members have cast their vote and the results will be displayed electronically. And that passes 8-1. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2255. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2255, amending Title III and Title 13 of the Broomfield Municipal Code to establish a stormwater utility enterprise, set monthly stormwater service charges, and establish a 10% state and local revenue cap as required by Tabor for all enterprises.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading and ordered published in full? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Okay, then council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That also passes 8-1. As a reminder, second reading of the ordinances and the vote on the Broomfield Borough and Arista Local Improvement District Board of Directors budgets will be on October 22nd, 2024. So I think this would be a good time to take our 10-minute recess before continuing on to item 7B. So it is 7:51. We'll be back at 8:01. Thank you. right, welcome back, everyone. And continuing on with our discussion, we just passed both ordinances for item 7A, and council wanted to take some time to discuss the URAF fund relief funds for the utility assistance program. So we're going to have an informal discussion about that and see where council is moving, in what direction. And I am happy to let Councilmember Lim kick us off. And then you, Councilmember Marshall.
Okay, I had already stated that I don't think we can expect all of Broomfield to absorb the 50% increase. I think it's difficult even for middle income earners to absorb this kind of sudden jolt to their expenses. And therefore, I would support the level of 100% AMI for the URAF program eligible households with a reevaluation after 1 year, as was described would be part of the process by Mr. Romine. Those are my thoughts for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Councilmember Marsh Holshan.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, kind of going off what Councilmember Cohen said earlier. Would it be possible to do 480 for people under 30% AMI, 250 for people at 60%, and then gradually like go taper off up to 100%, or is that too complicated?
Well, the operative word is too complicated. Yes, it's significantly more complicated. I think the recommendation would be council select an AMI and let's see what happens over that year so that we can get a better handle on the number and where they are in the AMI. And then whether it's an expansion of the program or possibly a ratcheting down if those folks at 100% AMI aren't utilizing the program. I mean, we saw that with the senior property tax. It took a while to ramp up. So while we evaluate after the first year, unless we had some real solid numbers, it would probably be 2 years before we'd modify so that we could have an opportunity to get that data.
Okay, that makes sense. On the 100% AMI, it's a higher price tag, obviously. Are we thinking that that would come entirely out of the enterprise funds? Or I know we had talked about the $5 reduction coming out of general funds. Are we thinking that some of that 2 million would come out of general funds, or would it all come out of enterprise?
All out of enterprise.
And the question then is, are the resources there that we could afford to do that without any additional rate increases?
Well, we will have a rate increase in the next 4 years. We're anticipating rate increases, nowhere near to where we are right now. I think perhaps the question, Councilmember Marsh Holshan, is would the assistance fund contribute to any additional rate increases to support that? Mr. Clark.
Mayor, council, I wanted to address that. We had a very small, at the very beginning, it was going to be a very small amount for this particular fund. As we've increased the amount just recently, none of that is yet in the budget. So that will, next year, it'll be implemented into those rates because those are not there. So if it's 550,000, I think that that equates to roughly 2% of rates. And don't quote me on that, but I believe that's true. So $1 million would be more like the 4%. So it would increase the rates. Now we have had a drier summer. And so I'm hoping that the amount that we projected early on in the spring, 15%, I'm hoping that that's less and we can absorb that and still get to 15%, but we'll have to figure that out.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. I would support the 100% level also.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my first question, and this might be for Councilmember Lim. the 100% AMI, was that sending the max 250 to 100% AMI, or was that, I know there was an email exchange between you and staff that had indicated there could be a tier, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you had said.
Yeah, yes, there was an exchange. And the reply was similar to what the reply just was to Councilmember Mars Hoshin, that it would be too complicated for
Okay.
staff to implement the tiered approach.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were.
Yeah, I
saying.
know,
Okay.
my original thought was to tier it.
Okay.
But the staff's answer was, it's too complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next question I have is going to be for staff. Is there a way in which, based on the numbers you're getting in from residents who are using the funds, we could do a mid-year budget amendment to either appropriate more funds or change the setup or something like that? Like if we know, like right off the bat, we're getting a lot of people under 60% AMI, let's say 30%, and we're not getting as many in 80%, 100%. I know you did say, based on what we've seen with property tax, it can take a couple years to ramp up. I'll have questions on how we're going to advertise this to people later, or next, but I just want to ask that question about mid-year budget amendments based on data trends we're seeing.
I think
Or to
when
be
we're
too quick.
Too quick.
Okay.
Because once you may have individuals that think they can accommodate the increase, only to find that their budget is being stretched more than they anticipated. Which, again, from a repeatable process and a structured process, whether it's what's assistance with water, it's better to start at a higher tier and bring it down than to go the opposite direction from a structure perspective. Because then if you start at a lower tier and you go to a higher tier, then you're another year out in order to garner that information about the population and the demand.
Okay. I guess my next question is, how did staff come up with 250 as the number?
It was half of the $40 increase.
Okay.
So it's $20. $20 times 12 is 240.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess my last question before I go on with this, and hopefully it's not too soon, is what kind of, how are we thinking the implementation plan is going to be rolled out? How is this advertised to residents?
All of the channels that we have available to us, in addition to the community update, the Be in the Loop, our DDI folks that are working in and have established those relationships with those marginalized communities that wouldn't necessarily be in the Loop, nor would they read the enterprise, nor do they go to BCC or recreation programs. So we'd have to do a deeper dive than historically with the outreach that we've done with traditional measures.
For people that receive individual bills and not those who are on master meters like myself, couldn't you just put something on the water bill? And
Yeah,
say-
we'll do,
Okay.
that in the traditional, in the utility bills.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then.
And
we
on
can-
the utility bills, so in addition to that, oftentimes when you have a flyer that's attached, we could have language that's added to the actual bill. Similar to what we do now, if you're having issues or if you get a shut off notice or any one of those, between the utility billing department and our housing department, it's not like this is a completely new population that we're going to be assisting.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure on that, and then we can discuss master meters later. I will agree with what Councilmember Lim and Councilmember Marshall have said. I'll support going up to 100% AMI for the time being.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm just curious, in terms of the too complicated, is it just a matter of the amount of labor, the staffing that we don't have, or, I mean, it's doable, but it would take manpower, staff power, I should say?
Yes. Yeah, and that's why I say, you know, the operative word is too complicated. And it's similar to, it's not really it's not a hurdle. But yes, it's staffing. And when we're looking at 2 years out, Councilmember Cohen, when we have the ERP system and we're able to automate what some of these caveats are, it'll make a significant difference.
Okay, I'm just curious because there was a reference, I think, in the budget hearings that finance, maybe it was the last meeting, finance staff was already taxed to the limit now. I mean, is there been a request to increase that staff if they're at that breaking point already without adding anything to it?
Yeah, we're not thinking that it's going to be in finance. We're anticipating that it's going to be in our housing department that already process, they process the applications, they do the follow-up, they do the inventory and all of the documentation. So they're accustomed to doing all of those fielding components, whereas our utility department isn't necessarily accustomed to that. So out of the utility fund, it would support that additional FTE in order to make these accommodations.
But if there was an edict that we just had to do it, we'd have to add 2 FTE or something.
Yeah, I think 2 FTEs is a stretch right now, but we just don't know, but certainly 1.
1 FTE.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Okay, I appreciate this discussion, and I'm just trying to think this through, and sort of the questions that were asked earlier, it leads to kind of as we go down the road and we start to see if the cost of this program increases and it thereby causes the rate increases to be even more substantial for those, because we're kind of going, if we give to 100% AMI, we're going everyone from like the average, the area median on down. So it really puts a heavier burden on some of the homes. And I understand the reasoning for that, but at the same time, these increases could become quite substantial if we have to continue to add that in and we don't consider other factors outside of just not everybody's expenses are the same. So I'm a little concerned about that. And if we did do this first year and over the next couple of years as we reevaluate it, if we start to see that these increases became more substantial, are we saying now that it's difficult to roll that back because we already did 100%, or we could start to decrease that amount?
I think that's one of the keys with our quarterly updates that we're going to be able to, so there isn't going to be a surprise mid-year and there isn't going to be a surprise at the end of the year. So we'll have pretty consistent updates with who has signed up, what is their AMI level. So at the end of the year, it'll be more of a wrap-up summary versus here's what we found throughout the year.
Okay, so if we began to see that the majority of half our residents are participating and we aren't having we start to have some of the wetter years and we're going to really start to see some more increases, we could ratchet the program back.
Certainly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other council members have any feedback on the structure of the proposed utility rate assistance fund at different AMI levels? And Councilmember Leslie, that was a good start.
You know, I just want to add, when we had the consultants here a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question, won't this stabilize as we start making these investments? We don't have to keep making the same amount of investment forever, right? I mean, we're in a catch-up, so we're going to be making some important investments now, but the amount, the cost of that will start to diminish in some respects. Obviously, inflation and other variables are going to continue. There'll be new regulations, et cetera, et cetera. But I would believe that there would be some stabilization starting to take effect in a couple of years, and you've kind of hinted to that.
That's correct.
And so I think to my colleague's question here, I think the ability to be able to monitor that, stabilize that, and maybe even start to reduce that as the rates, I'll just say stabilize. I wouldn't say come down, but stabilize. I think that will be important for us to stay on top of that. And I appreciate your point about the quality thing. I support the 100% at this point. And again, I like the idea that we could stay on top of it, modify it as may be necessary. But I do feel, not just because of the emotional presentation tonight, obviously that touched all of us, but I do know that there are folks that are going to be very hard pressed to make all of these increasing costs fit within their budget. And I don't know that people are actually leaving because of these things. People like to say that, you know. I mean, there are other reasons people leave. They get jobs elsewhere and their kids grow, they get old, and they go into a different place. But we all have the same vision that we want this place to be the same wonderful place that it's been and to get even better. And for people not to feel so stressed that they can't enjoy their lives, particularly for some of us, the last part of our lives. So I'm really impressed with the sensitivity of the chamber. And I want to congratulate the mayor and her comments. They were just so beautifully spoken and so timely, put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Any other feedback from our team? No? All right. Does that give you some good direction?
It does. May I ask, in addition to what council has right now on that slide, when we go into the 22nd, the update will say up to 100% AMI, and we'll have the other language removed?
Okay.
Yes?
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for the conversation, everyone. So we're going to move on to our agenda, item 7B. Our next item is a public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of a proposed ordinance number 2249 related to rezoning the George DeSiero Municipal Building and Police Building to the Public Facilities District. I'll declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And Miss Lynn Merwin is making her way down. The L and the M is kind of messing with me tonight, Ms. Merwin. Deputy Director of Community Development, please introduce us to this item.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Tonight's presentation addresses I'm sorry. I've got the wrong. Well, good evening again. The proposal this evening is Broomfield initiated application to rezone the property at 17 Tacombe Drive and a portion of the property at 1 Tacombe Drive from planned unit development to the newly created Public Facilities Zone District. The property includes the parcels containing the George DeSiero City and County Building and the Broomfield Combined Police Courts Building. The Broomfield Comprehensive Plan designates this property for public and/or quasi-public uses, and the rezoning application is consistent with this designation. The application does not impact Broomfield's long-range financial plan, and the uses of the property today for municipal government facilities would align with the proposed rezoning to the new Public Facility Zone District. The rezoning does not create any non-conforming uses or conditions on the property. Thank you for proceeding. Let's see, next slide, please. As the property owner and applicant, Broomfield held a neighborhood meeting regarding the proposal on May 22nd of this year. Subsequently, the Land Use Review Commission considered the application at a public hearing in July and recommended approval of the proposal with no conditions. City Council already considered the application on August 27th on first reading. And as noted previously, tonight is the public hearing and the second reading of this ordinance. The public notice requirements have been met for the hearing. Next slide, please. As a standalone zoning application, there are no proposed changes to the site, and thus site-specific conditions would not apply to this proposal. So the ordinance number 2249 sets forth findings for council's consideration, including that the proposal is in general conformance with the Broomfield Comprehensive Plan. The proposal is compatible with existing and allowable land uses in the surrounding area. The proposal will not result in substantial impacts to the health, safety, and welfare of the residents and landowners in the surrounding area. And the proposal is consistent with the city's overall planning and economic development goals. Next slide, please. There are no key issues identified for this application. And again, proposed ordinance number 2249 would approve the rezoning request on second reading. This concludes my presentation, and there are no additional presentations this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Merwin. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, now's the time. Not seeing any. Questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments is later. Any questions? Excellent. There being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2249. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2249, rezoning the George D. Sierra Municipal Building and Police Building, Broomfield City Center filing number 2, Lot 2, and a portion of Lot 1 from Planned Unit Development, PUD, to Public Facilities, PF District.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and ordered it published in full? Councilmember Leslie.
I move the resolution.
It's an ordinance, but thank you.
I move
That's okay.
the ordinance.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Marshallson.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2249.
Mayor, I
Yeah.
apologize for interrupting. Can I clarify that motion? You said published in full, and that might have been in the script. I apologize. On a second reading, we typically publish by title?
Yeah, it says
Or
published in full.
this is because it's the rezone. I think we've talked about this before.
Is it full or by title?
Can we ask for a modifier to be published? And if there is a legal requirement on in full, we'll publish in full.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Mayor.
you have the modifier.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. So seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote, which is kind of in progress. Everyone has cast their vote. Thank you. All council members have cast their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to 7C. The final item is council's consideration on first reading of a proposed ordinance related to occupancy restrictions based on familial status. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
I think we better get used to saying instead of the Anna Bertanzetti show, it's going to become the Lynn Merwin show. Ms. Merwin.
Good evening again, Lynn Merwin. Tonight's presentation addresses the first reading of proposed ordinance number 2241, an amendment to the Broomfield Municipal Code regarding residential occupancy limits. Next slide, please. During the 2024 Colorado legislative session, the legislature passed House Bill, or HB 24-1007 regarding the Home Act, which was signed into law by Governor Polis. HB 24-1007 has changed the ability of local governments to enforce residential occupancy standards and specifically prohibits local governments from regulating residential occupancy based on familial relationships. Instead, the new legislation limits local governments to regulating occupancy limits based on two key factors, including demonstrated health and safety standards such as building code, fire code, and environmental standards, and then affordable housing program guidelines that may apply at the local, state, federal, or political subdivision level. HB 24-1007 allows municipalities to continue to regulate occupancy limitations related to individuals who are required to register as a sex offender unless the individuals are related by marriage or related by blood. Next slide, please. Broomfield's current code language includes an occupancy limit for single-family and multifamily residential units of no more than 3 unrelated individuals. The code also limits the maximum occupancy within group homes to 8 individuals. Next slide. The proposed new code language, just as background, we had a study session with City Council on the subject on July 2nd of this year, and the proposed code changes contained within proposed ordinance 2241 are consistent with those changes previously discussed in July. The ordinance proposes to change commonly used terms such as single-family dwelling, multifamily dwellings, and family group living home. The proposed ordinance will change these terms to single unit, multi-unit, and group living home, removing the word family and thus removing the familial relationship restrictions from the proposed code language. The definitions in the code will cross-reference to the old language. The old language, or what is today the current language, will remain in code and existing documents like PUD plans and site development plans due to the administrative burden needed to change all references that have been incorporated over the decades. Moving forward, however, staff will utilize the new terminology in documents that we bring forward. Proposed ordinance number 2241 also clarifies that group living homes are a permitted use where single unit dwellings are permitted. This does not change how Broomfield has regulated group living homes. Rather, it is just establishing the group homes as a separate use category. Moving forward, the total number of people who can reside in a home will be determined based on a number of possible elements, including building and fire codes, the size of the home, the size of the septic system serving the home, and potentially the number and size of bedrooms. In regard to group homes, staff is proposing that the limitation on occupancy for group homes be regulated through those or through state permits, licenses, and certifications that are already in place. The proposed ordinance also references that group homes must also comply with septic regulations, building codes, and fire code regulations. Staff will continue to monitor how local governments are addressing group home occupancy and may revisit this in the future through additional code amendments. Furthermore, staff can also consider what other types of group living arrangements should be addressed in the zoning code, such as transitional housing or custodial care facilities in the future. Next slide. A Broomfield Voice page has been created to provide information regarding the proposed ordinance. Community engagement is encouraged, and any public comments will be provided to council as part of the public hearing and second reading of the ordinance. Public comments will also be accepted during the public hearing and second reading of proposed ordinance number 2241. Final slide, please. If approved on first reading, proposed ordinance number 2241 will be published in full, and a second reading and public hearing will be scheduled for the November 12th, Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Merwin. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard, please come to the podium. And I don't see any questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. Are there any questions from council? So seeing no questions, next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2241. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2241 to amend the Broomfield Municipal Code, Title 17, to remove occupancy restrictions based on familial status.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading and order it published in full? Councilmember Ward.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Marshall?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2241. Council members, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously 9-0. Thank you very much, Ms. Merwin and team. There are no requests for future action this evening. Is there any other business to come before the council from my colleagues or staff? Wonderful. Well, that concludes the items on this evening's special meeting agenda, and the special meeting is adjourned.